Thanks for having me.
You got it. All right, so then this will be the second part. I'm going to take a drink real quick. Oh, my goodness. You're the superest trooper of all time.
I'm good.
Wow.
That
I'm not
Moscow Mule.
I'm not used to super big episodes. This is the first for me. This is good. I love it, though. So what crazy stuff or whatever you had in mind? You said maybe Area X, or like halfway through you were thinking of, you had some other ideas, or
Yeah, so there is some stuff connected to the Bell Witch that's kind of interesting. But
jeez.
since this is called Bigfoot Society, it's kind of up to you.
No. So here's the thing about Bigfoot Society is it doesn't have to necessarily be about Bigfoot.
Okay.
Like it's anything weird. It's like how Cliff and Bobo have Bigfoot and Beyond. Like they do weird stuff too, but
I've never listened to it.
It's actually really good.
I don't have the heart to tell Cliff, but yeah, I've never listened.
Okay.
I don't listen to podcasts anymore though. Like I don't listen to anything. There's a show called The Complete Guide to Everything, which is basically a comedy podcast where these two dudes just like riff on nonsense.
Nice.
And I'll listen to that while I'm playing Call of Duty or Overwatch. And that's like the only show I listen to.
That's cool.
Yeah.
All right. Whatever you want to share.
No offense to you, though. Oh, okay. Are we live now? Are we doing this now?
Oh, sorry. We are totally live. Yeah.
Okay.
I try to make that evident where I'm like, okay, and then we're going. Yeah.
Awful.
I guess.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, it makes for funny transitions. So.
Okay. So I'm going to tell the Bell Witch thing because I think it's really interesting.
Okay.
Okay. So, and we might be able to go off on a rabbit trail here too. Okay. All right. So the Adams, Tennessee is interesting because it's what I've come to find is that it is not simply a story about like a haunting. There's a lot more to Adams than the Bell Witch. In fact, I would compare it to like a Chestnut Ridge or Skinwalker Ranch situation where you've got multiple phenomenon taking place. I could not find any evidence that there's like Bigfoot sightings or anything there, but I do know that there are spook light sightings going all the way back to the actual Bell Witch sightings, and that will be a part of our movie too, because the Bell family may have actually witnessed the Brown Mountain Lights on their journey to Adams from North Carolina when they moved to Adams in the early 1804s when they moved to Adams. And there's some discrepancy, some argument amongst historians as to what route they would have taken. But there is this, I can't tell if it's just legend or what, but there's this story that they were coming through the Brown Mountain area and saw the Brown Mountain Lights. So there's all sorts of weird phenomena that take place there. One of the most famous, besides the Bell Witch, there are sightings in the schoolhouse of this girl in green. They call her the little green girl. And while we were there, we interviewed this guy, Dewey Edwards, who's a local historian, about the little green girl. And supposedly she was a student at the school when it was still school. Today, it is a city hall / beauty parlor / local museum / restaurant. No joke.
No.
And apparently this little girl was in school there, and one day she complained of being sick. They took her into this one particular room that at the time was like a nurse's station, put her on a bed and left. And when they came back to check on her, she was dead. And today she supposedly haunts the school, right?
Oh, man.
Okay, so she's a little girl in green. That's going to come into play in a minute when I tell you my own personal theory on this. Okay. So Dewey, who also gets into ghost hunting and all that kind of stuff, has also claimed that when you go in that closet, you can feel one cool spot. in like one wall, which is where the bed would have been, where the little girl laid, and like he was able to monitor it on some sort of infrared thing.
Okay.
Anyways, so there's a lot of weird sightings of this girl that take place in the school. There's a local historian, Tim Henson, who's going to be like one of the main characters in our film. He's local historian, super skeptical about all of this. But for some reason, all the locals call him whenever anything weird happens. So like, despite the fact he doesn't believe any of it, they will call him to deal with it.
Oh, that's weird.
So in 2012, the school also housed an antique store. And the antique store was run by these two guys, and I think their wives, old people. They were all pretty old, elderly. Tim gets a call one night. It's kind of late at night. He picks up, and it's the owners of the antique store. And they say, "You got to get down here immediately."
Oh, boy.
And they said, "The little girl's here, and she won't go away."
No.
And so, so Tim's like, what little girl? What are you talking about? And they're like, the little girl, the little green girl, we see her all the time, but this time it's different, is the way they put it, which immediately sounds creepy.
Yeah, that's not good.
So Tim gets in his truck and drives down to the school. And when he arrives, every light and every door, every light, every window, every door in the building is all the lights are on, all the windows and doors are open. Ooh. So he pulls in, and like the schoolhouse is completely lit up. So he pulls in, he goes inside, and there's no one there, and he can't, like there's nothing going on. And he calls the owners on his cell phone, and they pick up, and he says, "Where are you guys?" And for some reason, they were at Bellwood. They were at Bellwood Cemetery.
Okay.
Which is right down the road. So that for some reason he said they were all worked up, and they had gone down to the cemetery. And so Tim walks outside, and when he walks outside, he looks across. So we filmed all our interviews in the original Bell cabin.
Okay.
Which sits outside of the schoolhouse. Beyond the schoolhouse is a huge cornfield. The cornfield is part of what would have been the Bell property. Oh, beyond the Bell property is Bellwood. You can see the obelisk from the cabin. I have to explain this, because when he walks out of the schoolhouse and looks toward Bellwood, he sees a series of translucent, glowing lights come out of Bellwood Cemetery, down across what would have been the Bell property, and make their way toward him.
Oh, no.
through the Bell property. And this guy telling us this is a total skeptic, keep in mind. Like, this is not a guy who believes in this stuff. In fact, he's staunch Baptist, like old school Southern dude. Like, he doesn't,
sure.
This stuff's nonsense to him. So he sees these things. He said about halfway to him, they just all disappeared. That's my scary story. The thing about the green girl that I find really interesting is that there are stories about a little girl in green swinging from a tree in 1817 she was seen by the Bell children. And it's interesting too, because there's two variations of that story, and we're actually going to show one of them in our film. We just shot it over the weekend. So there's two variations of that story, and I can't tell if they're two different stories and neither can anyone we interviewed. We can't tell if it's two variations of the same story or if they're two separate stories. One variation is that the kids saw a little girl in green swinging from a tree, and she eventually just sort of like disappeared. The other story is that the kids saw a girl in green, or a lady in green hanging in a tree, from a noose. And the theory amongst some people is that was the Bell Witch. That was the first real sighting of the Bell Witch. Would have been in 1817, which is how we're sort of showing it in our film. It's like,
that'd be wild.
This was the first sighting. But anyway, I think it's weird that that the girl that they see in the school all the time is this little girl in green. And it
Hmm.
makes me wonder if there's any truth at all to the story about the little girl who died in the school.
Hmm.
Because, like, what if it's just the same thing everyone's been saying since 1817?
Wow.
The
Yeah.
the little girl in green or whatever. The spook lights are a phenomenon that's been witnessed there going back forever. Like, the Bells saw them pretty constantly. They referred to them as lanterns moving through the woods at night.
Oh man.
That's what they compared it to, is they would see lanterns. And keep in mind, this is a point in time where there were slaves, and the Bells had 10 slaves,
Okay.
and the slaves that the Bells had, um, were a part of the story. um,
Hmm.
they they witnessed some of these things as well, especially one in particular. One of their slaves in particular, named Dean, plays a kind of like a constant role in the story.
Hmm.
um, it's really interesting, man. Like the Bells and their history, and like what actually went on there, and like Tim's Tim's like turned up all this untold history of the Bells, like the fact that John Bell had multiple children with his slaves.
Oh,
um,
yikes.
and
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it gets into some really really weird stuff that people don't know. Again, like, it's one of those things where you can't quite wrap your brain around why this town has really made the Bells like the centerpiece of everything. It's
Hmm.
really bizarre. It's really strange.
That is weird, man.
Yeah.
That's a cool little story.
The
Thank you.
lights, not the
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
exactly. Yes. Thank you for clarifying that. That could have come out really weird.
I'll tell you one thing, and you can cut this or keep it in here, but it is interesting, and I think it illustrates the way these stories become legend or folk tale, whatever.
Yeah.
Ellie will correct me if I'm using this the wrong way at some point. So, the 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 story as it's told has always been that Drury Bell, who would have been one of the oldest sons, or yeah, one of the oldest sons of the Bells, never married because he was like terrified of the Bell Witch haunting his wife and children if he had wife and children.
Oh, yikes.
And even when we interview people, they're still telling that version of the story. But we interviewed this famous, like, African American historian
Hmm.
whose specialty is slave life and what happened to the slaves post Civil War and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
And he has found like proof that Drury actually had married his one of his slaves, and it's just that at the time it wasn't allowed. So
Oh, yeah,
like
sure.
the reason Drury never got married wasn't that he was scared of the Bell Witch. He was married to his slave. He had children,
Wow.
with his slaves, and when he died, he left everything he owned to his slaves and freed them all.
Oh, wow.
Um, and
Okay.
and actually, what he told us was that they probably lived as free people while he was alive. Um, it's just that officially he couldn't declare that. So it's
Hmm.
super interesting the way reality has been twisted to
Right.
fit this like spooky story narrative of like the Bow, which was so scary to him that he never got married.
That's very interesting though.
Yeah.
That's a twist that a lot of people would not be expecting, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be in the movie too. So, spoiler alert.
Nice. Nice. Well, thank you, Seth.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks for
Yeah.
letting me talk for what, like two plus hours.
It's quite a bit. Excited to see all your new stuff as it comes out. You guys are rocking. But
Well, thanks, man.
yeah, keep up the good work, man. Yeah, and maybe our paths will cross again in the future. But good talking to you, man.
Thanks. Same to you.
You got it. See ya.